We like to say something about the Parsha every week on Thursdays. Can you I want you to open the Siddur. The Siddur actually is something I want to show you. We've been practicing the Shirat Hayam, page 133. Thank you.
Welcome.
What I suggest is that you put away your computer and your phone so they don't get spilled on by accident by somebody else, not yourself, of course. Anything could happen.
Unfortunately, I couldn't find it here in my balagan, in my keys, but they are here somewhere.
What are you looking for?
The
teas.
green
Okay, fine. That's fine.
Today is black tea.
Okay, black tea's lovely. I got some from upstairs. If you'd like, here's one for the next cup. My gift.
Thank you.
Okay, so on page 133, you see the Shirat Hayam, the Song of the Sea. Its format, the page layout is different. It's a strange page layout. Have you ever seen something like this? What does it remind you of?
Oh, there's a lot of space.
There's a lot of space. And of course, you see the previous passages. They also come from the Torah. Passages quoted just above. That's from the Torah too, from the book of Shemot. So all of a sudden, in the book of Shemot, chapter 15, after 14, this is the way it's written in the Torah, in this unique layout. So this is used for songs in the Torah. There's another song in the Torah called Ha'azinu at the end, and it has a different layout. Each layout has, of course, is an ancient tradition. The Torah is not kosher if it's not written in this layout. These songs, the Ha'azinu is in 2 columns only, and this one is described in the Gemara as being Ariach al Gabei Levena, which means that basically it's like you're building a building and these are blocks, one layer on top of the other, but they're staggered. Like when you build a wall, many times you don't put all the blocks one on top of each other, but you stagger them. That gives a little bit of strength to the building. And so this song gives us strength. It's also, of course, beautiful, and it designates this section of the Torah as a special poetic section. But there's something fascinating. At the end of the Torah, when Moshe is told to write down the Torah, the words used actually is Kitvu lachem et hashira hazot. Write this song. And it's referring to the song of Ha'azinu, but according to our sages, it refers to the entire Torah. Moshe was told to write out the entire Torah and give it to us. Hence, we treat the Torah, the entire Chumash, as a song. Now, what's the difference between prose and poetry? Rhymes. Many times poetry is rhymes, but there's also poetry which is not rhymed. And there are some rhymes here in the Shirat Hayam.
And lies.
Take a look at the beginning of about 7 lines from the bottom of the page. Amar Oyev, Erdov, Asig, Achalek Shalam, Arik Harbi. There's a repetition of what I will do, what the enemy is saying, of course. And Amar Oyev, Aleph, 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 Aleph. 5 words in a row that start with Aleph. You have a trivia question for your kids, okay? Find in the Torah 5 words in a row that start with Aleph. Here it is. Amar Oyev, Erdov, Asig, Achalek Shalam. We say it every day. And then there's another one coming up later. See, of course, there's poetic literary techniques like rhyming and repetition. What else were you were going to say, Aaron?
Lies.
Lies?
Lines.
Lines.
Yeah.
What do you mean lines?
Right.
No.
It's The layout of poem is different from.
Correct. The layout is different. What else? What else about the content? What about the meaning? What kind of books are used, or what kind of material is usually written in prose? What kind of material is usually written in poetry? Or why would you write poetry instead of writing prose? This is literature class 101. What's the difference between prose and poetry?
I don't know.
Prose means regular writing, what we call regular writing. Like you write a letter, like you write a book, line after line, and it has content. You describe it. You make your argument. You write down. Then there's something like a play. A play is a dialogue, so you have one person speaking, another person speaking, and then there's poetry. Poetry, like Aaron said, many times it's written in a different layout. We're looking at page 133, if you want to open it up. The Song of the Sea is written in a special layout where it's a unique format. But there's different formats for poetry, as I said. But why would you write poetry, and why do you write prose? What are they both used for?
Poetry normally is an art. It's a form of art.
And you saying that my wife wrote a book is not a form of art? Regular writing, prose writing, is also an art.
It's an art, but it's different.
It's a different art, I agree. It's very different. So let's talk about how it's different.
There always is a meaning behind.
It's not
Okay.
almost like a dialogue.
Poem is not always a dialogue. A play is a dialogue, but
The
prose?
prose.
Prose is not usually a dialogue. Prose is, you tell what happens, you tell a story, you describe an argument, or you describe, sort of paint a picture of something that's going on, or something that's going to go on, or what you think. So it's not necessarily a dialogue. So who writes poetry and who writes prose? Should I think about that one? Oh, you know the names. Okay. Do any of you write poetry? No?
Maybe one time for school. Maybe.
For school. Why were they trying to teach you how to write poetry? What's the difference between writing an essay and writing a poem? Aaron, you're in the arts. You should know. You've written many essays and papers.
I didn't really study poetry.
No, never.
I think poetry is more like concise, shorter, and expresses more emotions, feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But prose also do the same. But
Right. Curious. But I think you're right. I think you're right that poetry is usually used to express emotion and to express it in things which are hard to describe in prose. Maybe there's also, as Stephen was saying, a little bit of an art to it, sort of to say in a very few words, to give over an experience, to give over a feeling. Whereas in prose you would use more words to try to describe it.
It's also a form of to beautify a thing. As an expression you want to express, but you try to beautify it.
It's more beautiful.
The words is different. The language, everything you use to express.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You would use maybe perhaps fancier language,
Yes.
or a language
It's not
more
straightforward.
rare. It's not straightforward.
Yes.
Right. Very, very good. Who writes poems? Famously. What is a poem used for expressing?
Love.
Love, absolutely, right? The love. You can write a love letter, but also poetry is used. Songs, it's funny, in Hebrew, the word for song, shir, and the word for poem, shir. It's the same word.
How about Shiva? The same?
It's the same. It's just the feminine of the masculine. The shira and shir is the same word. And it's in English we have song means like melody, right? And the poem is the words and the formulation of the poem. But in Hebrew it's the same word, shir. So, az yashir Moshe uvnei Yisrael tashira hazot. We say it's the song of the sea, right? But really, maybe it should be translated as this is the poem of the sea. Right? It's a poem, and that's why it has the special layout. And a poem, I think, often has layers of meaning, which are a little bit beyond the surface, beneath the surface. And there's many allusions. You use special words which might throw you to an association, which could give another layer of meaning, a richer understanding of what's going on. So I think, for example, this format that we're looking at now, in the Shirat Hayam, there's more white space. Right? They could have written the whole thing in half the page, instead of now it takes up the whole page. What a waste of paper. No, it's not a waste. But what is the meaning that's added by leaving white space? Well, I think in many ways that's up to you. It's up to you in many ways, because the white space, it sort of guides you to ponder and to think about the deeper meaning and to try to understand the associations. And poetry is in that way almost telling you, don't just read the lines. What do we say in English? To read between the lines. So here it's not between the lines, it's between the words, between the spaces, right? Between the sections of the poem. So read between the lines. And to go back on what I said before, we understand that the entire Torah is called Shirah as well. At the end of the Torah, it says that Moshe tells the Jewish people to write down this song. Even though the context is the song of Ha'azinu, a special song at the end of the book of Dvarim, our sages understand that it means everybody has a mitzvah to write the entire Torah. Because the song is the Torah. The entire Torah is a song. Do we not try to ponder every word of the Torah? Read between the lines and try to plumb its depths and try to understand the meanings, the deeper meanings of each and every word. So we treat the Torah as a song, as a poem, shir or shirah. And I think this is an opportunity, this week's Parsha, where we actually have an actually defined poem in front of us to appreciate. It's one thing to write your mother a letter. Dear Mom, how are you? I am fine. Yesterday I went to the bank and then I got my laundry done. Tomorrow I'm going to go spend Shabbat at this place and then that place. And I love you very much. Right, Menachem? That's a nice letter. It's very nice. It's good. Better to write letters. Nowadays, what do you send? WhatsApp or who writes letters anymore? But then, on my mother's birthday, she very much loved it when I wrote her a poem. Like I was also taught in school how to write a poem. Roses are red, violets are blue. Whenever I think of you, I am not blue. Okay? So you make up a little rhyme. But the idea is to try to take the emotion, the feelings, and describe them in a way which is beautiful. It adds meaning, and it's considered to be an expression of love. So the Torah's words too here, our song. This is our song to God. This is the song that Moshe and the Jewish people sang, and maybe the song of Ha'azinu, the one at the end of the Torah, is God's song to us. It's God. Moshe is speaking and describing Jewish history for all generations, and how God took us out of Egypt, and what we went through to get to till we get to the end of days. In any case, this Shabbat, what's the parsha? Beshalach. So when you say, I want to come over for Shabbat, on Shabbat, Parashat Beshalach, right? Sometimes we call the Shabbat by the parsha. Last week was Shabbat Parashat Bo, and this week is Shabbat Parashat Beshalach. This Shabbat has an extra name. There's some Shabbatot we're going to see in the coming 2 months. There's going to be 4 of them. Shabbatot that have an extra name. They have the regular name for the Shabbat Parashat Mishpatim, Shabbat Parashat Truma, whatever the parsha is, but they get a second name. There's called special Shabbatot. We're going to go through them all. This Shabbat also has a special name. One guess. Shabbat Shira. This is called Shabbat Shira because we read in this parsha every year. Shabbat Beshalach has a second name. It's also called Shabbat Shira, the Shabbat of song. Or, the way we're explaining it, Shabbat of poetry. This is the Shabbat of poetry. If you're ever going to write a poem, this would be the week. Because it's Shabbat Shira. It's the week of poetry. Okay, I'm not very good at poetry. You heard my best. Roses are red. But I know that I'm not really developed in this area, and others. My wife loves poetry, and many others are. They really appreciate it, and it's like appreciating music, appreciating theater. It's appreciating the arts of various kinds. Some people are more attuned to it. Sometimes you have to develop an appreciation of this type of expression, of this type of beauty. And so this is the week of poetry, Shabbat Shira. Okay, so that was our introduction for today. And then once we're open, we should sing it. Eh? We've been singing it every day almost. Az yashir Moshe ובני ישראל את השירה הזאת לאדוני ויאמרו לאמור. Everybody see where I am?
Yes.
השירה לאדוני כי גאו גאה סוס ורוכבו רמה וים עוזי וזמרתיה ויהי לישוע זה אלי וענווהו אלוהי אבי ורוממנו. We're going to stop here for a second. There's another tune you might know already, and it was made popular in The Prince of Egypt. Do you know The Prince of Egypt?
Yeah. Oh.
The movie, it was DreamWorks if I'm not mistaken. The movie, The Prince of Egypt, tells the story of the Jewish people and Moshe taking them out and Paro and the plagues. And then it has the finale, the final scene, is the splitting of the sea. And then they sing. So I had a student who every day was Chazan in the yeshiva, and he loved this movie, and he loved to sing. And he would sing. Now he's a doctor in America. He's a wonderful man. But maybe he's still singing every day. You know, we say it in our prayers every day. Most people just recite it. They say it. But he sang this tune anyways. השירה להשם כי גאוגה, סוס ורוכבו רמה וים. Azimut Yavai Lishua. I don't know if I think they just repeat the first line over and over again. Shira, Ashira, 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 La Hashem Ki Gaoga, Suz V'Rochevo Gama Vayam, Shira, La Hashem Ki Gaoga. I'll play it for you. Okay, I'll play it for you. It's on YouTube for sure. Just have to find it. 1 second here, and it's very popular, not only amongst Jews. Ashira Ladonai, Prince of Egypt. Here it is. I'll send you the link afterwards. What's with my Bluetooth? Let's try to connect once more time. Just turn it on and off maybe. You can see the movie here, if you want. You see the people leaving Egypt and the Prince of Egypt. Shira. Oh, they skipped to Micha Mocha. 4 lines from the bottom. Micha Mocha Bailim. And then the last line. Amzug Alta. So they don't sing the whole poem. That's it. That's 1 minute of a song in the middle of this movie. Oh, now it should work.
Yep.
Oh, great. Let's do it one more time. How come we're not connected here? It says I'm connected. It says I'm connected, so I don't know why it doesn't play there. I don't know. Let's
Maybe we disconnect again.
disconnect and connect. I'll try. Let's try. There we go. Now I'm connected. Ashira. Okay, let's try again. There we go. In English, it means, I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Ga'o. Gloriously triumphed means successful. And then they skip to Micha Mocha, which is the punchline, which we say 4 lines from the end of the bottom page. And then the last line. You led the people to you, the people you redeemed. In your loving kindness, you led the people you redeemed. I'll send you the link. Oh, I left YouTube to send it to you. YouTube doesn't continue playing. It's finished anyways. Okay, so this is the finale of Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Seder. Let's go back and get started for today's laws of Kashrut. First, though, I have a surprise for you. Before I forget, I brought you something to show you, show and tell. I mentioned to you the other day that I received a present from a student of mine. And we were talking about shechita the other day. So here it is, the shechita knife. And it's wrapped up nicely here. Because it's never been used, shechita. But this is what it looks like. And we have a very special case. And this is only for chickens, though. This is what it looks like. And give me a piece of paper, please, from there.
Oh, it looks like very sharp.
It is very sharp. You don't want to play around with it.
The security.
Oh yeah. Oh, it doesn't seem to cut so. Very easily. Yeah, this would be not kosher shechita because it's dragging a little bit. But, yeah, so this is what in shechita you just one cut like that. That's it. It goes through. You don't push down, and you can't stop in the middle. We learned about the 5 rules of shechita. They use. I don't have very long fingernails, so I can't really check. But you use the top of your fingernail, and you run the blade over on top of the fingernail to see if there's no nicks, and then the other side of the blade, also both edges, the right and the left edge, and this is that's it. That's all it is. It's just very, very sharp. Whoever wants to look at it carefully, please don't hurt yourselves. And we'll put it back in here. And if you want to look at it, I can hand it around. Please don't touch the blade and hurt yourself. I don't know if we have insurance. But that's the shechita that we use.
But you only can, if you have a chicken, only can put like
one move, only one move. That's right, one move, and you have to cut through. So there's different rules for animals versus chickens. They're called simanim. There's 2 major pipes, and for you have to cut for animals. You have to cut the majority of both of them. You hold them in the way, so that, usually you cut them all, but it's kosher if you cut the majority, both of them. The blood rushes out right away, and the animal dies instantaneously. As we said, that cuts the blood flow to the brain, and so there's no pain involved as well.
This kind of knife has to be made by Jews, or it could be for...
No, anybody could make it. Anybody could make it, but I imagine they make it to specific order. But the knife doesn't have to be made by a Jew. Yeah.
Can it be any knife?
If it's been checked that it's going to do the job properly, it doesn't have any blemishes in the knife, that there's no nicks, and it's not going to drag or pull or cut in the, get stuck in the middle and those kind of things. So.
When you do the slaughtering,
Mm-hmm.
so they have to remove the feather first?
So usually they do, because what you don't want to happen is that on the way, when the knife is getting towards that the windpipe and the the trachea and the artery, you don't want it to hit a bone or hit something on the way, and then maybe the knife will get a nick in it. Maybe the knife will get damaged. The knife will get damaged on the way. So yes, usually they do clear away the path, take out some feathers, or shear some hair if it's a hairy goat or something like that, just in the place where they need to make the cut. And there's a specific place you have to make the cut, not too high, not too low. So we also said it's one of the 5 rules of shechita. And all right, Binyamin, you trust yourself?
But cow is
You have heard about Machon Meir knives?
Samurai.
No,
Yes.
Somer.
Somer, what's that?
The primitive people in the north
Okay.
of Sweden,
Oh yeah,
they make,
special knives. Aha, wow, wow,
but
wow.
this is a festival every 5 years.
Oh yeah.
And the 120,000
People.
dollars.
Oh, for a
One
knife. Wow, 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 wow.
American guy brought.
Wow, it's amazing.
So,
This is not that expensive.
No,
But
uh,
it's a special knife made for shechita, and it has to be long because you don't go back and forth. So it has to, you have to not slowly, but it goes through the width that you have, the depth of the arteries that you have to cut has to go through in one shot, not going back and forth. So you need it a little longer than the average knife.
If you use it, it become like not sharp, like.
So you can sharpen it afterwards. You can sharpen it up, and sure, if it gets blemished, you fix it. Yeah, you can fix it. Yeah. Don't confuse this with a knife for brit milah. those are usually smaller. No, they don't look the same. No, those are much smaller. And for a brit milah, usually we use a shield, which holds back the actual tip of the penis, so that what you cut is only foreskin. There's no danger to it. It's like the shield is like a V. So it basically, if I sort of describe like this, let's say you have, again, this is Brit Milah, it's not the same thing. So you have a foreskin like this around the penis, right? But you only want to cut the foreskin, not the penis itself. That would be bad, right? So it's called a shield. Basically, you pull the foreskin up, and then you find out, oh, my finger's only over here. And so you insert a shield like this in between, so the penis is below the shield. And that way, when you slice over here, no chance you're going to touch the penis, right? Because it's shielded by this shield. And so you slice like this. It's a very small knife, cuts off like in a second. And then when this part is cut off, so then you have the penis revealed like this. That's the first part of Brit Milah. And the second part of Brit Milah, which is that you have to peel back the top part over the crown. It's called the crown of the penis. And that's not the medical name, but in the halacha, that's what it's called. And then you peel this back, and this peeling back is a second stage of Brit Milah, which you have to do. And then this bent over part stays there. It heals that way, and that's it. That's what the Brit Milah is. But it's a different knife. Don't get scared. You come to Brit Milah and you see somebody with a knife like this, run, run. In the other direction.
Allow me again to read one.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
In Sweden, it offered me 100 Swedish crowns
Yeah, for what?
to see my face.
Why would they want that? Do that? Yeah.
Woman! They
Oh,
want to see.
terrible. Crazy things. People have to control their sexual desires. They never saw. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here, but this just needs to be wrapped up. So. Anyways, one day maybe I'll do a course, but I'm not really attracted to it. I'm attracted to it because it's part of Torah. It's part of Torah. This is a unique mitzvah, the mitzvah of shechita. It never says it explicitly in the Torah, but we know that it exists. Why? It says in the Torah the following thing. It says, when you go to the altar, take these animals, and you shall slaughter them as I commanded you. We look throughout the whole Torah. We don't find any command. How can the Torah be referencing something which doesn't exist? Slaughter it like I commanded you. But there's anywhere where it tells you how to do shechita, these 5 rules. It's all oral tradition. So the way we understand it is that there was an oral tradition. The mitzvah of shechita is an oral mitzvah without any text that says, Shabbat, it says the text. And then the rabbis can, enhance and develop, explain what it means to do work and not to do work. And there's certain things it says, most mitzvot, it says you should put, what did we read last week? You should put a sign on your heads and on your arms, right? But what does the tefillin look like? This is oral tradition. But at least it says you should put something on your arms. Here it just says you should slaughter. Like I told you. And all the rules are all part of the oral traditions. It's a very, very ancient tradition. So this is a mitzvah. So that's what attracts me about it, but one day maybe.
But with Tefillin, what they did after Sinai when they command like this? What they did in that time?
Good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe they slaughtered an animal and tanned the leather and found some ink from natural sources and wrote out the parshat of the Torah and put them on their arms and on their heads. Maybe they did. Just like they built a Mishkan. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it looked like. But we found ancient tefillin, not as ancient as the stories in the Chumash, but
From Rashi and
Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, the two versions of the tefillin, right? We spoke about it.
Yeah, I heard in Qumran they found two different versions of.
Right. Yeah, apparently they're kosher either way. Okay, back to the laws of Kashrut. So we were learning yesterday about the special prohibition, not of non-kosher animals. It's a perfectly kosher animal. And it's not the milk. It's perfectly kosher milk. Next week we're going to talk about what could be not kosher about milk. Of course, it has to be milk from a kosher animal. We said that already. But let's say you've taken out even all the blood and all the forbidden fats. You've taken out the gida nashe, and now you have kosher meat and kosher milk. The Torah says 3 times you're not allowed to cook a kid in its mother's milk. 3 times. And again, the oral tradition tells us this is repeated 3 times to indicate there are 3 prohibitions of meat and milk. What are the 3 prohibitions? Who remembers from yesterday? No, boy.
6 hours to drink.
No, before that, the original, the Torah law. That's rabbinic extensions.
Okay.
What does the 3 repetition in the Torah tell us? Number 1, you're not allowed to eat a cheeseburger, meat and milk. You're not allowed to eat them together.
Okay.
Number 2, you're not allowed to cook them.
And to serve them together.
Enjoy it.
And the 3rd one is to gain benefit from it, like serving to others. If they pay you for the meal, then you're getting money, even though you're not eating it, but you're getting money from the meal. So that's prohibited. Three times. It teaches there's 3 types of prohibitions. It's very severe. Other types of non-kosher items, even pig, bacon. You can sell bacon to non-Jews, hopefully. You can. In America, it's almost going to be the Super Bowl. Football, American football. Mm-hmm. What do they call it? They used to call it the pigskin, because the first footballs were made out of skin from a pig. Mm. Nowadays it's not made with pig anymore, but you're allowed to play football with pigskin if you want. There's no prohibition of benefit, of deriving benefit. Just don't eat it. Just don't eat it. But when it comes to meat and milk, it's extra severe.
How about a toothbrush with made of pig hair?
Permitted, as long as you don't eat it.
Yeah?
You heard of such a thing?
Yeah,
I didn't know the pig has hair.
Toothbrush are made of pig hair because it's hard.
Really?
Yeah, you have pigs with hair.
Wow.
Joe, and you
I see.
Here, where?
Boars, more. A boar is called. Yeah, it's a form of a pig, right? It's allowed. You're allowed to benefit from it. I wouldn't put it in my mouth because you might swallow it. Maybe one hair breaks off, and I don't know about the toothbrush. It sounds dangerous to me. But technically, there's no prohibition of gaining benefit from that type of prohibition. It's only meat and milk, the mixture of meat and milk. It's another one of the forbidden mixtures. We said yesterday that orla, kilei akarim, and orla, both of them have this severe prohibition of gaining any benefit from them, not only eating it, and basar b'chalav, you're not allowed to cook either. Don't work as a cook in a non-kosher restaurant because you're cooking up meat and milk. That was the beginning. We said, we mentioned that it's... that's the Torah law. The Torah law is probably only with animals. Red meat.
One mistakes that most of people do.
Yeah.
Butter.
Butter is a milk product. You can't have butter with meat. Yeah.
All over.
Yeah, it makes things yummy. Makes things very yummy.
But you have the special butter, right?
You can use margarine. It's not quite the same, but vegan butter, something like that. But if a lot of cooks, chefs, like to mix in butter to make things yummy. But that's prohibited from the Torah. You can't have meat and milk. It doesn't only mean milk. It means all milk products, right? We're going to get into those details a little bit later. But anyways, the rabbis, because we see that the Torah is very severe about this prohibition of meat and milk, they added restrictions, rabbinic restrictions. Number one, they expanded it to chicken as well. Not only red meat that you can't have with milk, you can't have chicken with milk either. Number two, they said you have to, you cannot even eat a meal on the same table. One person's eating meat and the other person's eating milk. Cannot be on the same table. Maybe you share with each other. If it's a big table and you're far away and you don't know the person, and that's not prohibited. But they were afraid that you're going to mix things. And today we're going to talk about the other restriction, which is waiting in between meat and milk. But before we get to that, we have to talk a little bit more about other ways which we separate between meat and milk in our kitchens. We're going to learn later that according to our sages, the food you eat, many times the taste gets transferred from the food itself to the dishes. And we therefore have different set of dishes for meat and a different set of dishes for milk and dairy products. The basics of a kosher kitchen is to have two sets of dishes. Now I have friends, my friend is a rabbi, and he doesn't have two sets of dishes. Why?
No milk products.
That's right. He doesn't have meat. The opposite. They were for many years they were vegan. Now they already do. And he learned for years the laws of separating meat and milk and dishes and these dishes. What if they get mixed up and it causes a lot of confusion? But he in his own house he had no problem. He had only dairy dishes because he didn't eat meat. Now he changed already. Now he's bringing back his knowledge to make it practical again. But in most families, in most homes, where you have milk products and meat products, you have to have two sets of dishes. Not only do you have two sets of dishes. So that means forks and knives and spoons. It means plates and bowls. And it means also serving dishes. Whatever you serve for a meat meal, you should not use for a milk meal. Wait, not only that. You have the pots in which you cook your meat dishes have to be separate pots for meat and separate pots for milk. And you have to be able to distinguish between them. You don't want to be able to be mixed up. So you have to clearly have a different color or a different pattern.
Different place.
You put them in a different place, maybe in a different cupboard, that's right, so that nobody can mix them up. Yeah.
You can use the same dishwasher.
We'll get to dishwashers in a second. But the idea, first I want to explain is that we have basically two kitchens. Most ideally you should have if you have two counters in your kitchen, one should be for preparing the meat dishes, and one should be for preparing the milk dishes, the dairy dishes. And we try to separate as much as possible. In some places, you have two sinks, a meat sink and a dairy sink. And some places, I have in my home, I have a dairy oven in which we cook dairy foods, and a meaty fleischik, it's called. Fleischik is the Yiddish word for meat. Fleisch, same word in many of the European languages. So we have an oven for meat. That is ideal. That makes sense. We are very careful about separating, because we said yesterday as well that the rabbis were concerned. Number one, because it's a very severe prohibition, the meat and milk, as we saw. It's even prohibited from, not only from eating it, but also from cooking it, and also from having any benefit from it, but also because usually you don't have pork in your house. usually, if you're trying to keep kosher, right? But you have meat in your house and you have milk in your house. So it's very common that they'll get mixed up. So we have to put lots of safeguards around so that nobody falls into the trap of, by accident, mixing and having some dish that has meat in it together with some food that has milk in it. We separate the dishes. And let's get to some more details, because not everybody. I'll tell you what most families have. They might have two separate counters and two separate sets of dishes. Red is usually associated with meat, right? And blue is usually associated with milk. But it doesn't have to be. You could choose whatever, as long as you can identify it. Members of the household have to be trained. This set or this pattern means this is a milchik. Milchik is from milk. It's a dairy products, and this so the members of the household have to know and be clearly distinguish it. In yeshivas and in big institutions like the army, it's become a standard that any kind of paint you put on, it's going to get worn off very quickly, because there's just a lot of friction and a lot of cleaning, and there's different people, and so they. First of all, the convention is that if one of the two types have to be marked, you mark the milchik one. And many times what they do, instead of putting on some paint with blue paint, which is going to rub off eventually, you actually put a mark, maybe even a hole. If you ever see in the kitchen here, I don't know if you have a fork, in the end of the fork, there's a hole in it. You've seen that? Or a spoon with a hole in it. That's a sign usually that it's milk, that is dairy. And the ones that don't have a hole in it, they're going to be for meaty, for fleshy. Okay? So now the one thing that most people don't have separate is a table. You have only one kitchen table. You have only one dining room table. You ever seen a house with two dining room tables? One for meat and one for milk? I've never seen that. You have?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, you must have a very big house.
No, I see.
We use different plastic.
Exactly. So what we do is we separate. We use the same table, but we put on a different tablecloth. You can cover with plastic, could be cloth, whatever it is, but you don't eat. Just like we said, you don't eat on the same table. You eat on the same tablecloth. But if one person is eating meat and the other person is dairy, and you have a tablecloth for. So usually the custom is to define what the bare table is without any tablecloth. So that you can use, let's say, for dairy products. Kids are eating their cereal every morning. You don't need a tablecloth. But when you eat meat, you don't want to eat meat on the same surface. So you put a placemat or a tablecloth, and you can cover half the table if you want. And half the table will be for eating meat, and half the table will be for eating milk. But you should keep that separation. So what else do we only have one of? In some families, you only have one sink. If you're renting an apartment, you don't get to choose how to design the kitchen. And if it's not a very big house, it's very luxurious to have two separate sinks. So the custom has been for hundreds of years. Jewish people didn't have two sinks. You're able to manage with one sink, but you have to be careful. You have to be careful not to put milk and meat dishes in the sink at the same time. And when you wash one, maybe you're washing it with hot water. We're going to learn about the laws of transferring of taste. Taste transfers with heat. And so if you have hot water pouring, or if you pour out some soup, some boiling hot soup into the sink, then maybe the sink will get meaty. And if there's milky dishes in there, then the taste will transfer, and they'll become any dish which becomes mixed with meat taste and then mixed with milk taste is what we call treif. Treif, we said, is not kosher. Of course, it's not an animal that's going to die within a year, treifa, but we use the word that it's not kosher, right? So you don't want to mess up your dishes. So you have to keep, if you have only one sink, you got to be careful to not put them both at the same time in the sink, both the milk and you separate between them. Some people are even machmir, stringent, and they say you should have a mat or some kind of insert into the sink so that the dishes don't touch the sides of the sink. Because the sink itself you're using with meat and milk, so the sink itself has absorbed taste from the meat and taste from the milk, so the sink is treif. If you only have one sink, maybe the sink is treif. So you should separate between your dishes that are kosher and the sink, which is treif. You don't want to have that contact, which could transfer taste. And so that's a good idea, if you have only one sink, to have some kind of a mat or an insert. We'll talk about the more detail.
Another big container.
You could use a tub, yeah.
Big container to wash, for example.
Yeah, you could do that. You could do that. Right. Some people, it's really ideal to have separate scrubbies, sponges, which you use to wash the dishes. You should have one for meat dishes, because there could be some leftover meat in them. And then when you scrub the milky dish with it, maybe you're using hot water, the taste will transfer, and you don't want, so you have two separate scrubbies, so two separate systems. But like I said, we only have one table, and we only have one sink sometimes. Some people only have one oven. I'd say maybe the majority of people only have one oven. Although today the standard of living has risen, and the manufacturers are even catering to the religious public, and you can buy an oven that has two separate ovens. Two doors, have you ever seen that? An oven that you can open one door and then another door. So they say one oven is for milk, the other oven is for milk. I have it in two separate places. I have a little toaster oven type of thing for my milk things, and my oven I only use for fleshing. So it is possible to use one oven for milk and cooking dairy, and the same oven for cooking meat, but not together. Matter of fact, some rabbis say you must make sure that the oven is clean. There's no spills left over of your cheese when you're going to put in your chicken afterwards. Not only that, you should turn it on the highest temperature for a half an hour, empty. And that is a method of sort of getting rid of the old taste, whatever was there. If there was cheese that spilled inside the oven, turning it on for half an hour is good enough. And then you can put your meat dish into the same oven. There are many rabbis and many communities where that's the standard. You don't have two separate ovens. You have one oven, but you separate between the cooking by this process of making it kosher again with the turning it on at the highest. Okay. So it is possible to make do with one oven. What else do we have? You asked me about a dishwasher. Dishwasher is a machine, which is an amazing machine. You put the dishes in. There's a rack inside. You stand them up so that the inside there's water that gets sprayed everywhere. You put in some soap, and the water gets heated up by the dishwasher. The machine makes the water boiling. So it cleans the dishes, and then it sprays the water. There's a sprinkler that rotates inside, and it washes the dishes. It rinses them. It dries them, and it all happens in one big tub. Question is, can you use that one dishwasher machine for milky dishes and for meaty dishes? I'm giving you the bottom line now. This is a brief survey. This is not an in-depth course. Some rabbis are lenient. Most say that you should not put milk and meat dishes in the dishwasher at the same time. And some rabbis say you can use it one after the other. I'm talking about modern day dishwashers. They've developed over the last, 100 years since they started to be used. And most of them are made with stainless steel. And without getting into the details, there's plenty of room to be lenient and use the same dishwasher for the milk dishes, and then for the next cycle, the next round, you use it for your meat dishes. Sometimes there's a filter that collects the remnants of some leftovers that you didn't take off before you put them into the dishwasher, and they collect in a little filter. Some people say you should look to see that there's no leftover pieces of meat or pieces of cheese or whatever it is in between. Some people say you have to run the dishwasher on empty in between, just like I said with the oven. And some rabbis even said you have a different rack. The rack which you put the dishes in that holds up the dishes, you should have one for milk and one for meat. And then some people say, just don't. You should have two. You should have two separate dishwashers, just like you should have two separate sinks, and you should have, two different tables, if possible. But if at all possible. One other machine, and then I want to take your questions. In most, I think, kitchens today, in the modern world, there's also another machine that we use, and that is a microwave. A microwave oven, which works very differently, but still, it's really prone for mixing of meat and milk. So I have a friend who has two microwaves. Same idea. Separate. However, there is a trick that I'd like to teach you as well, back to the regular ovens as well. So let's say you only have one oven, and you mostly you cook for Shabbat, meat. So let's say I'm not going to turn on the oven in between to make it milk. The oven can stay meat, and it's used primarily for meat, and the meat can splatter wherever it is. If you want to make a dish which is not meaty, if you double wrap it, you cover it up carefully, both underneath and on top, you can put that into your oven. Same thing with the microwave. Microwave, for example, we assume it's always used for milky products. Kids heat up a little frozen pizza. Sometimes it spills over onto that glass dish. So if you want to put in a piece of bread, if you're going to have toast, if you're going to unfreeze something from the freezer, you put it in the microwave for 30 seconds, a piece of bread, no problem. You can do that. But if you're going to have meat, if you want to have it with meat, so then you can put it into the microwave, but it has to be wrapped. Make sure that it's covered underneath and on top as well, so that the meat never comes in contact with the leftovers, and even we're not going to talk about it in detail, but the steam that comes out of the food, it can touch the sides. Sides might be milky. It could affect the meaty food in there. So you have to, if you wrap up your meat food, you can put it into the milchik microwave. Otherwise, there's rules how to kasher a microwave, how to make it parva again. But We'll talk about that before Pesach. We're going to talk about how to prepare a house for Pesach. But those are the major issues about how to keep meat separate from milk in the kitchen. Now I'll take your questions. Who wanted to ask the question? Yes, please.
I normally in the Sabbath I use banana leaves, fork, plate,
Okay.
and then
Throw them out. Okay. Disposable dishes. If it's not biodegradable, they say it's bad for the environment. And the environment is getting filled up with plastics. But like you said, there's some made from bananas, some made from paper, some that's biodegradable. That's going to just deteriorate. It's going to enter the earth. There's no problem with that environmentally, as far as I understand. So then you don't have to worry about having separate milk dishes and meat dishes. And but you can't really cook in that.
no.
Yeah, for pots, you're going to have separate pots. But there's some families, especially Haredi families, very big families, that find it's so cumbersome to, you have 15 people in the household, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're always washing dishes if you have. So they use a lot of disposable dishes. And of course, the cheapest is the plastic. A lot of them are not from the high social economic strata. And so there's a lot of plastic used by Haredi families. But it does make things easier in terms of kashrut, and it makes things easier in terms of, caring for the home and making things organized. So I'm not going to judge others, but definitely we should be aware and not cause harm to the environment, and we should take care of our lovely children. Sorry?
But 50 years ago, what did they do? The same.
They worked hard. They worked hard, and they washed dishes. Yeah. And the truth is, there were not as big families, I think, throughout history. It's part of the development of medical care. It used to be just 200 years ago that there was almost no family that didn't have one of their children die. Young children would die sometimes. You'd have people that had a family of 6 births, but only 3 children, because 3 of them died in childbirth or at young age. They didn't have antibiotics, and they didn't have the proper hygiene in birth. And so nowadays we're able to be more productive because of the better medical care. And other things, and nutrition, and so many other things, so many other issues involved as well. So I think this phenomenon of having these super large families. Do you have to go, Israel?
Immigration.
Well, good luck. Zat Hashem. Good luck. But whatever it is, disposable dishes is a nice solution for kashrut, of course, as well, because you just throw it out. You don't have to mix it with anything else. But if dishes do get mixed up, you ask a rabbi, and sometimes it gets complicated. But we're trying to keep things simple here.
There's no problem with banana leaves.
Banana leaves, yeah, they disintegrate over time, so it's not bad for the environment. Yeah, nice. But they themselves are a little expensive. You buy them in the store. They're not, bamboo is usually also made from.
It could be cheap, but
In Israel, it's expensive. Exactly. Yeah.
It costs 10
Yeah.
cent.
Yeah.
It costs 10 shekels.
10 shekels. Okay, so that could add up. You could buy for 10 shekels permanent dishes, and then you're not spending 10 shekels every day or every week, once a year. So it depends on your finances. I'm not telling you what to do, but it's if it's made out of plastic, for the same 10 shekels you can get 100, not 10 plates, but you can get 100 plates, right? But of course, the cheapest is to have permanent plates that you, not disposable. But then you have to have, be careful about the kashrut. I'm not mixing the meat and the milk. Another stringency, the rabbi said, is not only should you not, you have to have separate dishes, and you have to separate ovens and separate, separate between the meat and the milk in your kitchen. Also, time. Not only should you not have the cheeseburger in the same meal, you have to have a separation between eating when you eat meat and milk because maybe there's some remnants of food in your mouth. And so the rules are briefly as follows. The rules of separation between eating meat and eating milk, or it's not only meat and milk, it's dairy products and meaty products. So if you have a soup that you cooked up with chicken, even if you take the chicken out, the soup remains meaty. You have a sauce that's made with one piece of meat, the entire sauce is going to be meaty. And you have to wait. If you take a bite of it, you have to wait the prescribed time in between eating meat and milk. So what are the prescribed times? I'm not telling you things you haven't heard before, but it's good to get clear on the basics. So let's start with milk. Milk, the rabbis were pretty lenient, and they said, as long as you wash your mouth out. Nowadays, you brush your teeth. It gets out all the stuff in between your teeth, and any remnants of any milky products in your mouth, any taste, you'll taste the Colgate and Crest toothpaste before you taste any milk anymore. And so, as long as you wash out your mouth, in the Talmudic times, the way they washed out their mouth was having a neutral food. Chew on a piece of bread. And then in terms of liquid, so have a drink of water. So if you have a drink and a piece of food which is not dairy anymore, right afterwards you can have a meat meal. There is a custom that appears first in the Zohar that you should wait for half an hour. That's what I was taught growing up. You wait half an hour between milk and meat. But it's not really a law obligation to wait as long as you have cleaned out your mouth with having a bite to eat and a drink to drink. Then you can go ahead and have your meat. No problem.
Half an hour.
Yeah, that's the Zohar says you should wait half an hour between milk and meat. After having milk, before eating meat. And of course you have to make sure your hands are clean and the table's cleaned off, and you're now going to use the milk and put away the milk dishes and not be mixing it. If you're going to take out the steak, take out the burgers, take out the chicken, that's only after your hands are clean and your mouth is clean, and then you can do it right away. After you've had meat, not enough to clean out your mouth. It's not enough to wait half an hour because meat taste is usually stronger. Meat taste, sometimes meat is stringy, it gets stuck in between your teeth. And so the rabbi said, Marzutra, it says in the Gemara the following statement. Listen to this, Aaron. Listen to this. This guy, are you better than your father or worse than your father? So out of humility, obviously we want to say, our father, wow, he was on such a high level. I am like, so Rav Zutra said, I am like vinegar compared to my father who was wine. Right? Wine is delicious, and if wine goes bad, it's called vinegar. So why am I so much on a lower level than my father? Because if my father had meat, he didn't have dairy products till the next day. A whole day he waited in between meat and milk. And what do? My practice is I wait from meal to meal. If I have a meat meal, then I wait, and the next meal I'm allowed to have milk. So that's what it says in the Talmud. So what does that mean? From meal to meal. So the first estimation is, well, in the olden days they used to eat 2 meals a day. The latest, even if you eat a late breakfast, you eat breakfast, 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and then you have dinner around, 6 o'clock. And so the standard became between meal and meal means 6 hours. And this became pretty much standardized not only in the Sephardic countries but also in the Ashkenazi countries, is that what it means to wait between a meal and a meal is 6 hours. In my family, I grew up, our tradition was it doesn't, in the olden days, people didn't have watches and clocks. They wait from between meals. It was approximately 6 hours. So our family tradition was you wait into the 6th hour. It doesn't have to be till the end of the 6 hours. Standard is 6 hours on the dot. You clock from 10:20 till 4:20. Then you can have your milk. Then you could have your coffee with milk, even though you have to wait a full 6 hours. My tradition, I wait 5 hours, 5 and a bit, 5 and 1 second is enough. So I always look, what time is it? Am I allowed to have coffee with milk? Has it been 5 and a bit, 6 hours since I had the meat meal? There are other traditions. You know what I'm talking about. He's smiling. He's a happy man. But I don't think you can take on the Dutch tradition. I don't think you can take on everybody knows the Dutch tradition is to wait only 1 hour, not 6 hours. And everybody wants to be Dutch. Every Orthodox Jew wants to be Dutch. Because it's much easier. And the truth is today we eat 3 meals a day. Makes sense that the difference between one meal and the next is not 6 hours, but maybe there's another tradition. Apparently it comes from England. Maybe other places. It's mentioned only in one place in the Middle Ages. I believe it's the Sefer HaItur. But anyways, 3 hours. Yeah. There are a lot of European Jews who have the tradition. We wait 3 hours between meat and milk. And you're allowed to follow your custom. As I said, the origin in the Talmud is between meal and meal. And it's a question of, what becomes standardized in terms of the clock. But most Orthodox Jews, I believe, and most rabbis say you should keep to the standard of 6 hours unless you have a family tradition otherwise.
Rabbi, this 6 hours is from the time you eat or from the time you finish eating?
It's a good question. People always ask that. I started the meal at 10 o'clock, but I only finished at 12. Do I have to wait from 12 or to finish at 10? So there is room to be lenient. And of course, it's a debate. Some people say, no, 12 o'clock when you finish the meal. 12 o'clock was finished. Oh, but there is room to say that I finished the meat at 11. And then I had dessert, which was parva. There was nothing meaty in the fruit that I had and the cake that I had. So I think you can be lenient from when you finished eating the meat until when you have the milk, the milky products, the dairy products, the next time. There's room to be lenient about when it's actually start the clock counting from when you finish the meat. But then you have to try to figure out when did we finish the meat. Usually you're not looking at the clock when you finish your meat, but you estimate. It's not. My approach is to be a little bit flexible about this. Okay, let's see what other questions we have about waiting between and separating between meat and milk. We talked about dishes. We talked about various sinks and various pots and pans. One other thing I have to talk about in this context, and that is a concept that some families, some kitchens have something called parva dishes. Because let's say you want a cut salad, and you want to have some of the vegetables you'll finish at this meal, but then maybe you won't finish it all, and you don't want to be cutting salad 100 times a day. So you want to have some of the salad at the first meal and some of the salad at the second meal. And the first meal is meat, and the second meal is milk, or the opposite. So you don't want to make your salad dairy, or you don't want to make your salad meaty. You want it to be parv. Parv is neither milk nor dairy. And that's fine. That's a good idea. And so some people actually have, the problem is, what dishes are you going to use? If you use the meat dishes, maybe the salad will become meat cutlery, meat knives. Maybe then the salad will be considered to be meaty. And then you won't be able to have it with your milk meal. And some people separate and they say, we have, and that's what I do in my home, we have parva knives and parva cutting boards. I think we might even have a parva bowl. I'm not sure though. But yeah, we definitely have some parva things. And that's very useful, especially as we're going to learn later on, when we talk about taste being transferred. There are certain specific foods which transfer taste even when they're cold. And I'm referring to sharp, spicy foods like onions and garlic and a few others. So that if you cut a salad and you cut onion in your salad and you use a meaty knife, then you're going to have a meaty vegetables, even if there's no meat in them. And so that's why it's quite useful to have parva knives and parva cutting board and maybe a parva storage container so that the salad or other types of foods retain their parva status. They don't become meaty or milky. And that's quite common. You don't have to do that. But it makes things a little more complicated. Small kitchen, you have 3 types of dishes, right? 3 different, and what color is it going to be? Well, this is red and this is blue. Well, what's parva going to be? Orange, green, yellow, I don't know. But then you have, okay, I have one knife which is orange, one which is yellow, one which is black, and one which is red, and one which is blue. It's quite a complicated system. You have to be careful not to mix them up. But of course, that's what happens. You mix things up. And so you have to know what are the rules if things get mixed up. And so that we have to learn in greater detail another time. But I don't want to go into it. Okay, one other thing that I want to talk about separating between meat and milk is what about children? Little children, they have to be educated. You don't want to feed them non-kosher food. And so we don't feed them meat and milk together. I wouldn't give a cheeseburger even to my baby. I don't want to give milk and meat. Of course, you're not allowed to have benefit from milk and meat. And you don't want the child to eat forbidden foods. Just like I don't give him non-kosher food, I don't give him meat and milk together. But when it comes to not eating them together, one after the other, there's no real Torah prohibition. You can have meat and then wash your hands. Make sure that the tray you're feeding the baby on is clean. And then give them milk right afterwards. It's no problem with infants. When they get a little older, you want to train them to keep kosher themselves. It's part of giving them a good Jewish education. So then you train them whenever they're, some people say it's 6 years old, 9 years old, depends on the child. If they can understand what it means to wait, the difference between 1 hour and 6 hours, little children don't know the difference. They don't think in terms of time. They don't really understand that until they become a little bit older. When they get old enough, you should train them. And for them, you can be lenient and not wait 6 hours. If it's hard sometimes because, let's say you're feeding the little children the meal, and you want to feed all the children together. So some children that are 9 years old, but some of them are 5 years old, and some are 3 years old. And so you're feeding them a milk meal, even though they had meat earlier, but you want to feed all the children together. So you can be, and it's, the meals are not 6 hours apart; they're only 3 hours apart. So there's room to be lenient with little children until they become a year before bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. Then you already have to train them what they're going to do when they become adults, when they become legal adults at the age of 13 or the age of 12. They have to know. After meat, you have to wait 6 hours, unless you're Dutch. And they have to be trained before they become bar mitzvah. But before that, there's room to be lenient. You should teach them that we wait in between meat and milk, but you don't have to be so strict about the precise amount of hours like you are for yourself and for the rest of the family. For children, there's room to be lenient. And of course, infants, as long as you're not actually feeding them meat and milk together, there's no problem. Okay? That's it. Any questions? Other questions about separations?
What I want to ask regarding
Yeah.
Pave.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say I prepare the salad.
Yeah.
So let's say morning I have milk,
Yeah.
milk dishes. Then we eat the. I mean,
Then there's leftovers.
it's leftover.
Leftover salad.
Then
Good
after that, in the
question.
afternoon I want to eat
Exactly.
the leftover with the meat.
Exactly. Good question. Very good. So what do you do? So because you took the salad and it was on the milk table, often you'll get some milk mixed into the salad. Depends on the salad, depends if you're using forks and knives, depends if you're using your hands, depends if people have a serving utensil. If everybody's taking with the food that they're eating their milk with, taking that same fork and sticking it in the salad, then you're going to get some leftover milk products in the salad. You can't use it with meat. But if you're careful about using serving dishes and serving utensils, and you're sure that no milk has gotten into the salad, or the opposite, no meat has gotten into the salad, then you can use it as long as you're sure that there's no milk in there or no meat in there. You can use it at the next meal.
Okay.
There is a custom which is, let's say I'm not sure. I do have serving utensils, but maybe somebody wasn't careful and they put their spoon or their fork that has meat on it into the salad. So that's sort of like in between. There is such a law that you have to assume maybe that there's a status of meat, and so you won't have the salad with milk or the opposite, but it doesn't make you fleischiks. As if you eat that salad later in the day. So don't eat it together with meat or with milk or the opposite of what you had earlier. Don't eat it together. But we don't have to assume that it's like chicken soup or that it's meat gravy that for sure has the status of meat. So if you eat the salad later, before or after the other type of food, then you don't have to assume that the salad itself is become meaty. But you should refrain from eating it together with meat or milk, just in case that there's something mixed in. If you're absolutely sure, you can eat it together with your meat meal. But if you're not sure, we try to be careful and not eat it together with milk, or if before it was eaten with meat, or the opposite. But afterwards, if you don't eat meat and you just have some of that salad later on, it doesn't make you fleischiks or milchiks. You don't have to assume that there was meat or milk in it.
Okay, how about Shabbat? We have bread, we have salad. Then after that we have fish, and after we have fish, we have chicken.
Amazing!
So
Wow, sounds delicious. I'm hungry.
But
Can you invite me? That's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's beautiful. Yeah.
But the salad remain until the meat. Is it okay? Or?
Yeah. We didn't talk about the separation between fish and meat. It's only milk and meat.
Yeah.
Fish is a whole other ballgame. We'll talk about it another day. That's a very different laws. We're only talking about milk and meat, not fish.
Is fish parva?
Yes, fish is parva. There is a custom not to have fish together with meat. And some communities also have a custom not to have fish with milk. But that's it's a small group. Majority of what's well known is that the custom not to have meat together with fish. But that's not because it's not kosher, it's because the Talmud understood that it was unhealthy, that it was dangerous. It's dangerous to have meat together with fish.
That's the reason they put two forks and put...
That's right. So we try to separate between fish and meat by having separate dishes and separate forks. Pretty much nowadays we know, as far as we know, there's no danger. It's not, doesn't make you sick to have meat products together with fish products. So we keep the custom, but we can be lenient about it whenever there's an issue, whenever there is, one of my Rosh Yeshivas, he made a point of not having two forks. If you have your fish, and you eat the fish, and you take the fork and you put it in the napkin, wipe it off. It's enough, and then you can have the meat. Why? Because if you have double the amount of forks, somebody's going to have to work hard washing the dishes. And if you have 10 people in the house, that's okay. What if you have 100 people? What if you have a yeshiva with 300 people? That means there's another 300 knives, and another 300 forks, and another. And if it's plastic, if you're using disposable, then it's bad for the environment, and it's more money. And so you could really have a big ramification. So if it's easy to have two separate sets of forks and knives. And in many families, that's the custom, that you have separate dishes for the fish and for the meat. And that's based on an old ancient custom. We don't just throw out our customs. But if there's a reason to be lenient, like I was describing, then we know now pretty much that it's not prohibited. It's not really dangerous. And so you could be lenient about that. I wouldn't have fish together with meat on the same plate, but we can be lenient about having one and then the other one, even with the same dishes and with the same cutlery. It's not the end of the world. You just wipe it off to make sure that it's to keep the custom. But it's not the same rules as what we've been talking about, meat and milk. No, not anywhere close. Yeah. What else? What else we have? Wow. There's one other rule that it says in the Talmud, is that we said after milk, how long do you have to wait?
You can eat some bread,
Eat some bread, drink water, and then you right away. The Zohar says half an hour. Good, you've been listening. The Talmud says there's a category called dairy products, which are very potent, almost as much as meat. Hard cheeses have more taste. And for them, some people had a custom in Europe to wait longer. Some people say 6 hours even, yeah. Some people say 6 hours. Some people say 1 hour. And the question is, what do we do today? And do we have those kind of cheeses? What do they mean by hard cheeses? There was a process of making cheese which we don't really use nowadays. Even the cheeses that we have that are hard, they're not made for like 6 months. Those hard cheeses were sitting, and maybe those taste was extremely potent. And if you have the yellow processed cheese that we have, a hard cheese that we call, it's usually yellow, or that's. There are some rabbis who are very lenient about that and says you don't have to wait any 6 hours. If you want to be stringent and make a distinction between hard cheeses and soft cheeses, so 1 hour is enough. That's what Rav Melamed says, but it's not universal in any case. And especially the rabbis who are the experts in the industry say that the method of making hard cheese that perhaps they did in Europe that they were talking about, where its taste lasts for longer, that's very specialized cheeses that were made for
like old cheese.
Old cheese, yeah, old cheeses. Maybe their taste is very potent, and it could last for longer. But some people, as I said, many rabbis are lenient about it, and they say even if you have cheeses which cheddar cheese or mozzarella or Gouda, and they come in a chunk, they still don't have the law of hard cheese. You don't have to wait 6 hours. But if you want to be machmir, wait 1 hour, and that's good enough. This is but you'll find different opinions. Some rabbis say, of course, you have to wait 6 hours. It's hard cheese. But many Ashkenazi customs say that 1 hour is enough after hard cheese. And like I said, you're waiting a half an hour anyways because of the Zohar. There's some Ashkenazi communities. So an extra half an hour. So that's why you'll see some people say, I wait a full hour between milk and meat. It's because of this idea that maybe you had hard cheese. And so, but as I said, the simple halacha is wash your mouth out, and that's good enough. Beseder? Don't worry, we did a good job on the, there's other issues of halacha, but we covered the laws of meat, making meat kosher, and then mixing meat with milk. Next thing we have to talk about is milk products, how milk products are made kosher, and then other problems, eating bugs, and what other things, prohibitions of things cooked by non-Jews, all sorts of rabbinic strictures that make keeping kosher more complicated. We're going to talk about that briefly next week, and then we'll be ready to prepare for Purim. But there's a few other things that we have to talk about, and then when we're going to leave off the issue of how to kosher your kitchen. That people are doing before Pesach. Sometimes you want to have dishes that you used for milk, and you say, no, I really need an extra pot for meat. Can you switch it over? Is there such a thing? Can you change the status of dishes from milk to meat, or meat to milk? We're going to talk about that more towards Pesach, because on Pesach, many people do that, because you have your dishes which are chametz, they're full of chametz, and then you want to use them for a Pesach where you're not allowed to have any chametz. So there's a process called kashering, making it kosher, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the actual prohibitions of meat and milk were well on the way to having a kosher kitchen. Okay? So Hashem will continue next week. Yeah. Question? Yeah.
Let's say I bake bread in meat oven. Then can I eat this bread with milk?
Yeah, as long as there was no milk in the oven together with it, custom is to be lenient. I bake a cake right after I make my meat in the oven, and then I bake a cake. The cake is parva, as long as it's not in it together. At the same time, we assume that it's allowed and it remains parva. Yes, Eitan.
Okay. Like our pants and everything, our stuff is not kosher because we're not Jewish.
Okay.
When we become Jewish, you have to put everything in the mikveh.
Good question. That's another issue which we haven't discussed yet. In that there's a concept that you have to put all of your dishes used by a Jew have to be put in the mikveh. It's a mitzvah to immerse the vessels. And we'll discuss it another day. I have some good news for you on that one. But there are different opinions. But some rabbis hold that the minute you go into the mikveh, all the dishes in your possession it's as if they went into the mikveh too. It's a nice opinion, huh? There's room to be lenient, but we'll talk about it in greater detail. Yes?
When we are invited, we follow the track of the family that they invite you?
It's a good question. We have to discuss it in greater detail. We've said before that for many issues, as long as they keep kosher, that then you can rely on their kashrut, unless you have a specific opinion, or your rabbi has a specific opinion that you follow. So for this issue, for example, waiting between meat and milk, if your custom is to wait 6 hours, they can serve your milk, but my custom is to wait 6 hours. If my custom is to wait 5 hours, I told you, 5 and a bit, into the 6th hour. So you go to someone who's Dutch, and an hour after you're eating meat, they're going to be serving you milk. So you're not Dutch. You would want to be, maybe, but just because you're a guest in their home, it doesn't mean that you can stop your customs. Of course, this is about waiting between meat and milk. There's room to be lenient in circumstances if somebody's going to be offended, but it's become quite standard that people know that sometimes people have to wait in between meat and milk. But if somebody doesn't know anything about it and they're going to be offended, there's room to be lenient. So as we said, this is a custom of waiting 6 hours, and that's the standard. But the standard can be flexible, and if you need to, But usually people understand that, if you, sometimes they even tell you ahead of time, be ready. When you come over to my house for dinner, we're having dairy. So don't have a meat meal too soon before you come over. A, I want you to be hungry. And B, I want you to be able to eat the food. You can't eat the dairy food if you wait, I don't know, let's say you have a special custom, you wait 10 hours. Do whatever you want. But I'm telling you that if you want to come to my house for dinner, we're having Menachem, and so make sure to finish your previous meat meal early enough. Yeah, Eitan.
In this situation, like people visit us,
Yes.
and they do like 6 hours.
Yeah.
We also don't eat milk then on that moment.
Oh, that's very sensitive of you. Very nice.
Like,
Very nice. Good.
It's not nice if you drink milk and other.
Right.
Like,
Right.
So we also don't do it.
Although my daughter now, she took on the custom of her husband. They keep 3 hours, so they are very happy to have their coffee after when I can't. So they're not as sensitive as you are, but they're not doing any violation. Really. Thank you. Shabbat.